Podcast with Brad, Jim, and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears Podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears Podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week, along with my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review movies either current or classic on the show. Of course, all with a lovable bear twist. We are very excited to bring you two main things on this episode. The first of which is going to be our review of John Wick Chapter 4, which we had the pleasure of screening at South by Southwest Film 2023. We got to see its US premiere with Keanu in the audience. It was awesome. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be discussing a few other films that we saw at South by Southwest Film, things that we loved coming out of the festival and think you should put on your radar to keep an eye out for when hopefully they get released and they are available for you to see. So lots to talk about on this episode, but before we can get into any of that good stuff, let me give you some more good stuff. Jim Pugliafico is with us here on the show this week. How are you, sweetheart?
I'm doing good, babe, and bringing the good stuff, I hope. We'll see about that. But yeah, we're gonna be talking more about South by Southwest later, and we have a new exciting movie to talk about. So what more could we ask for?
Indeed. I'm looking forward to that as well. And something that just puts the cherry on the top of the whole thing, of course, William Lindis is here with us as well. Hey, Will, how are you?
First of all, Brad, Jim, I'm happy to be the cherry on your Sunday here on a Tuesday, which you, the listener, are listening to on a whatever day of the week it happens to be. No, I'm glad to be here. It's fun to talk movies as always with y'all. We've got a bunch coming up on deck today. This is a pillar to post South by Southwest 2023 episode. We've got a big feature coming up, as well as a few films that might not be on your radar, but maybe should. So these are the types of episodes I love. It's going to be a lot of fun things. We're going to come in at you pistols blazing with just movie.
Indeed. And it's going to be utterly glorious. Good stuff is right around the bend. But before we jump in, guys, I gotta ask, have you recovered from 7 days at South by Southwest seeing movies like it was literally our job?
Boy, I don't know. Recovered is I don't know. In one way, I wish we were still able to do that. We've been to the movie theater, the usual movie theaters at our local place to see movies maybe once since we got back. So I don't know. I think we need to get more into a rhythm here back at home again before we fully have recovered from South by.
You guys know me. If the festival was still going on here, 10 days later, I'd still be driving out and checking out movies each day. If anything, it's like, I want to go back. I need to get back to South by Southwest. I guess I have to wait till 2024. It's one of the nice things about being done with the other end of the festival is, a lot of good things going on at work, a lot of good things kind of going on around, here, locally, family, friends, that sort of stuff. So, plenty to keep myself occupied otherwise. But yeah, I do miss grabbing my cue card and lining up for the next new movie that might just knock my socks off.
Indeed. It's like the island from Lost. We gotta go back. Never should have left. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about, as we mentioned at the top. Fellas, how do you feel about jumping right into our main movie review of John Wick?
Yeah, I think I'd like that.
Yeah, let's do
it. Okay, there you go. Keanu voice and gun noises. I think we're good. All right. So for anyone who is maybe unfamiliar with our show, the way we like to do things with our mainline movie reviews as we talk about them spoiler free for about 10 minutes or so. We give a little bit of background on what the movie is. We share our initial thoughts on whether we liked the movie, didn't like it, do we think it's worth seeing or recommending? And then we give plenty of warning before we open up the can of worms that are spoilers. So if you haven't seen the film and you need to step away for that, you'll definitely have plenty of notice to do so. So if you're on the fence about seeing John Wick Chapter 4 and you want to hear our opinions, that's super cool. That you want to hear what we have to say. As always, though, you'll probably want to form your own opinion. But B, we're super, super jazzed to talk about this movie. So let's dive in. Here we go with our discussion of John Wick Chapter 4. All right, Jim, if you don't mind, get us started on this one. It is the fourth movie in a franchise. We may not need a whole ton of background, but what is this movie and what did you think? Is it worth seeing? Would you skip it? Recommend it? Where did you come down?
Well, yeah. So we've got as you said, this is the fourth movie in the John Wick series, and maybe the final one. Rumor is swirling around this one, probably both ways, but and maybe we'll get into that discussion a little bit later. But this one I think is being heralded as the latest and greatest. It's certainly the biggest, I would say. This movie clocks in at 2 hours and 49 minutes. So this is a jam-packed film, though. I'm going to read the IMDb summary, and then we'll get into some of the details. John Wick uncovers a path to defeating the High Table. But before he can earn his freedom, Wick must face off against a new enemy with powerful alliances across the globe and forces that turn old friends into foes. So here we go. We've got Keanu, as we said, back as John Wick in this one, of course. A lot of familiar faces are back. We've got Lawrence Fishburne. We've got Ian McShane is back here. We've got some new faces too. I do want to call out the sad news that Lance Reddick, who played Sharon, I think is he the concierge? Is that what he's called?
The concierge, yeah.
The concierge in these films passed away just, I think, last week. We got that news I think it was just after we saw the premiere of the film at South by Southwest, and we'll talk about that experience too, because that's going to be amazing. But
get up, Keanu!
Lance Reddick, get up, Keanu! But yeah, Lance Reddick. So recognizable, so great in every role that he's been in. He's going to be missed. That was a shocker to hear about his passing. So I did want to mention that in this film. The new faces we've got here are, at least for the series, not new faces in film, but we've got Clancy Brown in this one who shows up. We've got Donnie Yen, a favorite of mine from the Ip Man series. If you've seen any of the Ip Man films, they're great. Donnie Yen is great in those. To see him show up in here was a thrill. Shamir Anderson was another actor here who played a character that we'll probably talk about a little bit more. So yeah, great cast. This is this crew, Chad Stahelski, who's the director, with Keanu and the writers, have really got this John Wick thing down. It's they've kind of perfected this type of movie, right? And so whether or not this is the final one or not, if it is, I think they're going out on a super high note. To me, this is probably, everybody can talk about the first movie, or the second movie, but I think this film is really tough to beat. I think this is worth seeing. Strap yourself in, empty your bladder beforehand, because it's 2 hours, almost 3 hours of almost nonstop action. There are a few spots where you might be able to sneak away to pee, but this is this is fantastic. It's got some amazing and inventive action set pieces in here. that we'll talk about a little bit more. But and really, that's what this movie's about, right? It started out as kind of a revenge movie, and now it's John Wick trying to escape the grip of this organization called the High Table. And this movie brings the heat from the get go, and I love it. And yeah, we'll talk about our movie watching experience for this, but which I don't think can be topped. But I'll let one of you guys kick that off.
All right. Babe, thanks so much for that great introduction and sharing your thoughts. Well, how about for you? How did this one hit on your end of things?
Oh, this one didn't just hit me. This one kicked my ass. The John Wick franchise is in sort of rarefied air, in that there are very few franchises where you can get 4 films deep and say every single one of these is good. And with the John Wick franchise, every single one of them is good. And so it really comes down to, when you're doing like rankings, which one's best. It comes down to personal taste at a certain point, but there's not really a wrong answer. This one this one feels very epic. The other films up till now have been really doing world building, and this film really explores what it's like to sort of, when the different elements that that have started building up over the last few films in this very specific, very unique world, all start to come to a head. How does that impact the world and the characters in it? It's really cool to see that play out very organically. We don't have to have like narrative scroll or voiceover saying, in the beginning there was a crime family. We just learn about it by doing it. That's what's so cool about this. And there are very few better action movies than John Wick 4. Like, there are fight sequences in this that are just absolutely like game changers, and then they're followed up a few moments later by another scene that is another game changer. There are fight scenes that are utilizing techniques that are popularized in certain styles and angles of like video games. There is a fight sequence that lasts 28 minutes long. There's just a lot of different things in here that you're going to be in for a good time all the way through. This is, for a 3-hour movie, I almost say this is, all meat, no fat. Like, there's, the slow moments are just there to sort of build up the character and build up the stakes. And all of the action sequences are engaging in very different ways. I loved this fucking movie, to the point where it's weird to go to a film festival and say like one of the big, like, studio action films was one of your favorite films of the festival, but this was one of my favorite films of South by Southwest. I enjoyed seeing it. I enjoyed seeing it there. I went back and saw it a second time over the weekend, and I mean, it slaps just as hard. If anything, some of the beats actually hit even better on a second viewing too, which was, I was afraid I was going to have some fatigue going into it, but nah, it holds up. So strong recommend. The John Wick franchise is if you like action films, you can't do a lot better, especially with this cast of ringers that they pulled in, from Donnie Yen, seeing Scott Adkins, one of like the action movie greats, showing up here in a very, very different form, was also fun to see. So yeah, John Wick 4 is great. Go check it out. 100% go see it.
Awesome. Will, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts as well. I think I agree with both of you quite a lot. This definitely was a really good movie. I think I gave it 4 stars in the audience vote thing at South by Southwest. I won't harp on the things that I liked because I think both of you already covered them very well. I just want to add one note. As much as I did like this movie, I think its runtime is a little bit to its detriment. And I think, Will, you mentioned like a 28-minute long action sequence. While cool, for me at least, it left me a little action numb. There are parts of the movie that are just nonstop, blam, 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 pow, kick, and it just gets to a point where I think my brain gets overloaded and like lowers its like sensitivity levels to like, I don't know, prevent me from going into super overload. That's not to say the action sequences are bad or that it's not a good movie. It's just, I think for some people, it might be a little much. You know, these films try to outdo themselves with each iteration. I don't know that we need a 28-minute action sequence, but some really cool set pieces. There's I'm sure there's stuff we're going to talk about in spoilers in terms of locales that the film has some fun sequences in. So I'm going to use the rest of my time to speak to something you brought up, Jim, which was our experience seeing this movie at South by. So this is one of the first things, or was it the first thing? No, that was Dungeons and Dragons. But this was something that we saw kind of early on in the festival compared to many other things that we saw. We had express passes, which if you liken them to Disney fast passes, you like get a pass at the beginning of the morning. It guarantees you a place in the express line. You still have to wait in line, but you're pretty much guaranteed to get a seat and get a pretty decent seat at that. The theater this premiered in was the Paramount Theater in Austin, Texas. We saw this with about 1,500 other people. But we were, how far back in line were we, guys, for John Wick? Do you remember?
Oh, we were
fairly
close up there. Yeah, like in the first like 10 or so. 10 or 15. Yeah.
We got there a couple hours before the movie and got in the express line. And that sounds like a lot of time, but when you're on your phone writing film reviews and talking to people around you and doing all the things, I mean, it goes pretty quick. Definitely was worth standing in line for. We got to see this movie with Keanu in the audience, which was fucking amazing. That guy, he's crazy in such a great, fantastic way. In the Q&A after the movie, we got to hear him talk about some of his experiences, you know, filming these movies over the last decade. We also got some people asking some really fucking weird questions and trying to give Keanu a DVD. I don't know. It was super weird, but really, really cool experience seeing this with a movie festival crowd. Will, you were making fun earlier of the woman who, like, at one point Keanu's down on the ground, he's on the ropes, and she's like, "Get up, Keanu." And Jim and I were talking about this earlier. Jim, what did you say about the subsequent times that she did that?
Oh yeah, well, you know, it got a big audience response the first time she yelled it out in the middle of the movie during one of the action scenes where, you know, he seems to go down and he has to get back up to fight his way out. And but then, you know, she kept doing it. I think it was her, maybe other people picked up on it, would yell it out like four more times and got a different reaction every time. And by the end, it was like, oh,
diminishing returns. It was essentially a catchphrase. Like, I kind of considered her like the Urkel of our audience, like the Steve Urkel of our audience. She landed on a catchphrase that everybody loved, and then she just beat us over the head with it.
But we'll always remember that screening. And one of the things I want to add to what you said, Brad, is that this was set up as a secret screening, right? This was not advertised as part of the festival lineup. It's just that they had a secret screening. And by the time the day before the movie, the day before the secret screening, well, the secret was not so secret anymore. It had kind of leaked out what the secret screening was going to be. So it was a relative mob scene for people trying to get a place in line for that movie. And you know, as is the case with some of these big premieres at South by or any other festival, probably, the queue line was probably way longer than the capacity of the Paramount. And you know, I feel for the folks that stood in line for a long time but did not get in to see it, because it was, you know, seeing a film like that or like this in those surroundings, it's really a special one-off case. And I'm just so grateful that we were, you know, fortunate enough to be there for that. And, you know, thanks to South by for bringing it in. And, you know, it's not the typical like indie release kind of movie, but at South by you often get these big, these big name studio releases
Yep.
there. So, yeah, it was a grand experience. Probably one of my all-time favorite movie experiences.
Yeah. You just don't get a chance to vibe like that in a room full of people that are also vibing, that many people. Because when you're seeing a premiere, um, especially something like this that was a secret screening, and I say secret screening, like it had been when Jim said it had been leaked, it was like it was being published in like Variety and several of the different industry, so it was pretty spread out there, but like there were still people in line who didn't know for sure. And so there's this buzz like, what am I in for? What's going to happen? And then when you're seeing it there and everyone's engaged and just like every punch, people are, oh, it's hard not to have like a very specific positive reaction to that. That's why I was happy to go back and see it a second time too, because I needed to make sure that my viewing experience was correct, right? Like, am I seeing it through festival goggles or was I seeing it like for what it was? Unfortunately, my fiance was like, I really want to see John Wick, baby. And I'm like, yeah, I want to see it again too. Let's do it.
Awesome. And we should clarify too, with secret screenings at South by Southwest, they're secret until like moments before the movie rolls, and you get an introduction with like a cheeky hint, and then the movie starts, and then you find out what you're there to see. So for 1,500 people to line up, literally stretching and wrapping around whole city blocks to see this movie, is kind of a big deal. It was awesome. Very, very cool experience. Again, thank you to Claudette and the rest of the South by team for making this possible. Guys, let's get into some spoilers if you're ready. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Ready.
All right. So spoilers for John Wick Chapter 4 are imminently inbound. If you've not yet seen John Wick Chapter 4, you're on the fence, you wanted to hear what we thought, feel free to step away at this point if you don't want to be spoiled on the plot of the movie. If you don't care about being spoiled, then by all means stay with us. And of course, if you've already seen the movie, this warning is probably not necessary for you, but hang with us all the same. For those of you who are stepping away and you're listening to the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, feel free to use the time index in the show notes and skip past this spoiler section into our South by Southwest section. We've got 3 movies that we want to put on your radar. You're not going to want to miss those, so skip ahead as needed. I've talked for like a minute. I think that's given everyone quite enough time to bail as needed. Here we go. Spoilers for John Wick Chapter 4.
I mean, let's start with the kind of the spoiler. At the end of this movie, John Wick dies. This is the conclusion to this, quartet of films. Even though there is maybe some buzz about them making another one, the character is very definitively dead, and the story, I think, pretty cleanly wrapped up in a bow. By the end of this movie, John Wick, who has originally got out of the game to live a happy life with his wife, and after she died, struggled to find purpose, and then found himself pulled back in, and just everything along those lines. By the end of this, he dies getting his freedom back, and he's able to go out on his own terms. I thought that was a cool way to do it. I feel like this movie did not pull that punch, nor did it pull a few other punches as well. So I appreciated that ending. How did you guys feel about it?
I was really surprised, to be honest, that they killed him off. Listen, this movie and certainly the ones before, but this one especially, have basically become superhero films at this point. I mean, John Wick wears a suit that is bulletproof. It can literally ricochet bullets off of just holding up a panel of the cloth. I don't understand the physics of that, but again, it's a superhero movie basically at this point. So, we see John Wick like getting shot. We see John Wick getting punched and kicked and getting the shit literally like beaten out of him almost literally. Thank God, not literally. But you reach a certain point in this film at the end after this duel that happens, so that John Wick can get out from under the table organization, and he fucking lays there and dies. And my first thought was, okay, well, he's dying, but like they're gonna do something cheeky, like after the funeral scene, which we did have, they're gonna show him like in some city in Italy or something, like with different hair, sipping an espresso under an assumed name, changing his identity so that he's safe. But no, we don't get that. We do get an after credits stinger. We get to see John Wick's dog, but John Wick is still fucking dead. Now, whether the film, because in its stinger, it sort of sets up the continuing story of the Donnie Yen character, right? And the vengeance quest that another character is on against him for killing her father. Do you think they'll make another John Wick movie continuing that storyline, or was that just a one-off,
I'm kind of hoping. I'm kind of hoping that they stick to their guns. I mean, I gave the movie a ton of credit for the way it ended. Actually, a lot of these times, you'll see a character apparently fall over and die at the end of a movie. Then they have a funeral scene, and then that there's a post-credit stinger coming up, and we're gonna see a clue, or we're gonna see that character, like you said, Brad, pop up in another city walking by and give the camera a look or something.
At a Parisian cafe, like you mentioned, it's like, Monsieur, would you like another croissant?
And then the guy comes up.
Yeah, he's like, oui, I think
I'm gonna need some sugar.
But
no, the movie does not do that, and that's great. I've heard that I was just checking out some of the director's upcoming projects, and one of them is called Ballerina, which is about a female, I think basically a female version of John Wick who goes on a vengeance quest. So, hopefully they're turning a page here, freeing up Keanu to maybe do some other things. Who knows? Maybe, I don't know. Did they was he at Speed?
Yes.
No. Yeah. I don't know. But free up Keanu, right? Free Keanu. So
free up Keanu.
But we'll see where that goes. But I hope they don't. I hope they stick to their guns, because I think that's one of the strong points of this film. The other strong point I want to mention is, at the beginning, the first action set piece or two, I'm like, okay, this seems very same to what we got in John Wick 3 Parabellum. I was having some deja vu moments actually during one of them, where I think it was the fight scene in like the museum, or it was like in a museum or something like that. It looked where there was glass things all over the place and glasses breaking. It kind of reminded me. I'm like, oh great, we're just gonna rehash it. But I give this movie a lot of credit, because each action set piece that came after that got added a layer of inventiveness, right, and gave us something fresh and new. And I think it's strongest, it doesn't fizzle out. This movie gets stronger as it goes. And that's a tall task to ask for a movie that's like almost 3 hours long, with probably, 8 or 10 action set pieces in it. So this movie definitely gains momentum, and I think nails the finish, which is a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that there's a way to continue this story without like resurrecting the John Wick character, and that's something that they've been sort of bandying about for a while now, which is like, this is a very unique and interesting world, right? So you can do the story of the Continental, or the story of the table, or the story of the Donnie Yen character. I would love to see if you think about this the John Wick series started with a act of someone who had a set of stasis in their life, had that disrupted, and went on a vengeance mission that ended up causing all of these repercussions. That's what happened to John Wick. We are now seeing that exact same thing happen with Akira, which is the Rina Sawayama character. at the end as she's going and tracking down the Donnie Yen character. By the way, Rina Sawayama is one of the like best like pop musicians out right now. This was her film debut. She'd never been in a film before, and she had a meaty part, like with a lot of like, especially the fight scenes towards the beginning of this movie is in quite a bit of them. I would love to follow her some more. Yeah, I think that I want to stay in this world. I don't necessarily need it to be John Wick, but I would love to watch a movie called, The Continental or something like that, and just follow like a story of like something else that's happening within that, or even, give me like an 8-episode like television series where each one sort of follows a different aspect of this world. That'd be cool as hell.
But I gotta admit, like they didn't. I don't know what she'd be so upset about. It's not like they only killed her father. They didn't kill her dog or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, we'll see if we end up getting additional content, whether that be a limited TV series. I think The Continental would be the perfect name for it, or an additional movie. But Jim, you mentioned some of the really cool action set pieces that sort of follow that first fight, which I agree with you. I felt like we were at the end of the last movie again, but absolutely this movie takes it from that standpoint and just fucking blows it up across several really, really cool set pieces. We actually have a comment in the live chat from D Geek Will that I agree with wholeheartedly. Hi, Will. He says, my favorite shot was the continuous overhead shot towards the end of the movie. Was that toward the end of the movie, or maybe more toward one of the like beginning fights in the nightclub?
I would say it was like the beginning of the third act or something like that.
So I could say exactly where that one fell. There's a part towards the end of the movie, that 27-minute fight scene where John Wick has to get from one place to the spot where the duel is going to happen. So he starts off like on the roads, and then he goes into the streets, and then he goes into this building where that fight scene happens. And when he comes out of that is the stairwell scene. To give you the context of that. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying. I've only seen it once. And again, I mentioned I kind of got action brain numb from a lot of it, but that was probably my second favorite action sequence from the movie. Such a cool shot following John Wick from room to room as he's like battling all these people and shit's going down. My favorite action set piece though was the stair fight at the end, which is ridiculously silly, but like fucking amazing too. This big battle happens on the stairs. John Wick is running up the stairs, fighting people coming down at him, shooting at him, launching at him. He keeps getting knocked down several flights of stairs. The bulletproof jacket I'll accept, but like falling down all those stairs, man, like your body would be fucking broken. Your neck would be snapped. But John Wick lived through that, and I'm glad he did, because he gave us probably one of the coolest action sequences I've seen in easily the last 20 years.
This is a filmmaker in Chad Stahelski who draws very heavily off of both Hong Kong and Korean cinema, and that shows here. The overhead shot, he was directly inspired by this video game, which I've not played, called Hong Kong Massacre, which is like an overhead, like, the whole thing is done in shutdown. That was made as sort of like inspired by this game that came out a few years earlier called Hotline Miami, which I have played, and is like, it's also a pretty needlessly violent but whips ass kind of game. I love that was where he drew that one set of influences from. And then the stairwell fight really borrows a lot from 2003 Park Chan-wook's Old Boy, the hallway scene. You could see elements of that playing out in the stairwell scene, because it's this sort of this constant momentum of him moving against the crowd and moving his way forward, and sometimes being pushed back and sometimes being pushed forward. You saw that same sort of like almost like wave mentality of the way that he's attacking these stairs. That's really cool. This is a director who, Chad Stahelski, as a guy who came in as a fight choreographer, stunt guy, and he brings in these very specific elements and influences, he's created a style that is both homage and also very uniquely him. And I think that's what's so cool about these John Wick movies. Like, they bring us something that takes some of the best elements of great things that are already being done and remixes them into something that's great by itself. Yeah, both of those fight scenes are so good.
Yeah, and I'm not, I mean, I'm not a gamer really, but I mean, any games that I played were years ago, but I can remember playing like the first, what is it, Zelda game, basically.
Yeah.
And like in the movie, this movie, the camera is high above a series of rooms in a building, on a floor of a building, basically with the ceilings cut off, right? So you're watching the characters battle between rooms, within rooms, and that's very video gamey. It goes back even further to like very early video games, like these scroller games where you're scrolling like from room to room from the top. It was really inventive. I thought the other wrinkle they added to that pushed that scene over the top was there was some kind of weapon that he was using in that scene, which was I don't know weapons very well, like especially guns, but like it was some kind of gun where he shoots it and it like the round explodes or
The
something.
dragon's breath rounds.
Dragon's breath gun or something, which was, I mean, it was really cool, and it added a whole like another level to that scene.
And I don't know much about them, but I mean, Dragon's Breath shotgun rounds are not an invention of this movie. Like, there are actual incendiary shotgun shells that are out there. They made them look cool as fuck in this movie, though, especially in that overhead as he's doing shots. Like, you can see stuff getting blasted off the walls, things catching fire. You can see as he ducks back to reload. There's a point later on where the tracker character, who's sort of like one of the neither protagonist nor antagonist type characters that he bounces up against, sort of like a mini boss fight itself. There's moments before he even is fully introduced in the scene where he's already moving around and doing a couple of like pot shots over at John after he's taken it. And I thought that was cool too, because I knew the exact geography of where all of these characters were in this scene at any given time. And that's hard to do in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you say that those explosive shotgun rounds are real. I didn't know that. I don't have a lot of knowledge around guns. Guns scare the shit out of me. But I think because this is like a superhero movie, again, I think some of my like gun violence weirdness stuff kind of fades into the background a bit. I just I don't know. I like the choreography. I think the shots look really cool. I mean, literally and figuratively. I definitely appreciate a lot of the work that went into, I think, staging all of that. I imagine it's a pretty difficult thing to do, but they make it look pretty effortless. So kudos to that. Guys, did you have any other final thoughts on John Wick Chapter 4 before we move on?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say like the ending duel scene has a great like gag. I don't know if you call it a gag, but a great mechanism at the end for the final shot, if you will. I think that was pretty awesome. It doesn't, for a movie like this to surprise you in terms of like gunplay or whatever. You think you've seen it all, and then you get to that last duel, and it has one more surprise for you. I won't even give it away here in the spoilers, but I'll just say there is a huge wrinkle in it that surprised me, and I think the whole audience that we saw it with kind of erupted when that happened, which was really cool.
This movie is just filled with great moments. We've seen a lot of films sort of in the years after John Wick's, like the first John Wick came out, try to mimic this style, but I don't think any of them have really captured just how good these movies look. I mean, I'm not even talking about how good the action and the choreography is, although it is. These scenes are, even though there's like a darkness to these movies, like there's very few moments of like sunlight in these films at all. But even though it's usually in dark settings, it's always super well and interestingly lit. I can always tell what's going on. The characters are always kind of lit dramatically and enticingly and engagingly. There are moments in this where you just have random characters doing like weird shit for no reason because this is an over the top world. There's a poker game that shouldn't exist but does. I mentioned it before. Scott Adkins, one of the like best like action fight scene movie guys working right now. For some reason, they put him in a fat suit and had him do stuff in this movie. And it kind of works. He creates this over the top character. I don't know. Every single moment of this film is just, you can tell that they're saying, like, how can I make this interesting? How can I make this world fun? How can I make this, elevate this scene a little bit more? At no point, at any point in this film, did I feel like they phoned in a shot or they just sort of went through the motions on a scene. You know, everything here feels very deliberate, and that's what I want out of these movies. So I walked away with just such a positive experience.
Absolutely. And the only thing I'll add before we move on, these films do a great job of both weaponizing and making lovable affectations when it comes to dogs. Really appreciated the doggos that we had in this movie. It was great to see John Wick's dog with the concierge again. Or no, not the concierge, because concierge was gone, but with the guys at the end. All right. Well, we have a whole lot more to talk about. Definitely looking forward to continuing our coverage of South by Southwest Film 2023. We've got 3 films that we want to put on your radar, things that we think that are pretty awesome, you may enjoy. But this needs a little bit of setup because not everybody listened last week. Not everybody has listened when we've talked about South by Southwest in years past. In fact, you may be like, what the fuck is the Southwest South whatever they're talking about? So Will, as our resident Austonian, maybe you could give us a little bit of background. What is South by Southwest Film? And yeah, get us rocking and rolling here.
Absolutely. So South by Southwest is a multiple day film, music, electronic interactive media, education, comedy. It's all of these different festivals all kind of bunched into one kind of overarching umbrella festival that runs every March. This year specifically, March 10th through March 19th, 2023. Of course, we attended the film version of it as we have for like 10 years now, guys. 10 years of South by Southwest.
Wow.
And during the course of this time, you know, we got to chance to watch a lot of movies, many of them world premieres or international premieres or US premieres, or films that had a very successful run at like the Sundance Film Festival or something like that. But these are all films that were not yet out in theaters, some of which are massive blockbusters or things that will hopefully be blockbusters, like John Wick 4, like we talked about. Films like Evil Dead Rise, the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves movies, Tetris, things like that we'll be talking about later in upcoming weeks on this show. But in addition, it features a ton of wonderful documentaries, independent narrative films, experimental films of all sorts of different flavors, comedy to horror to queer stories to things about like important like musicians that you should learn about, or even terrifying situations that are happening in the world that need to be documented. All of those things appear in film in some way, shape, or form at South by Southwest Film Festival. And we can't talk about every single movie that we watched. We, through the course of the festival, we saw like 25 films-ish, and that was a fraction of the films that were available. So, yeah, we had some real bangers, though, in that. We've got 3 that are on deck to talk with you today about.
Indeed, we do. And Will, thank you so much for introducing folks to South by Southwest. If you ever get a chance to descend on Austin for this film festival, this tech festival, education, music, etc., it is such a fucking good time. It is wonderful. And it is absolutely put together with love and care by Claudette and the rest of the team behind South by Southwest Film. definitely go next year. We're trying to get a podcast meetup going next year for friends from other podcasts and fans of this show and their shows. It would be great to get a bunch of people. So definitely, if you can, it's pretty early, make some plans to attend South by Southwest Film 2024.
But if you come and visit here, please look us up first so that you can make sure that you can say hi to us, you can reach out to us. But also, please don't move here. Those are the two things that I ask you as a local lost tonight. Please visit, but only during that 1 week in March.
Oh, goodness. All right. That's fair. All right. Well, let's start with our first movie. Again, as Will mentioned, these are films that really impressed us to the point that we want to get them out there to you early. You may not have ever heard of these movies. You may know nothing about them, and that's completely okay because they're probably not going to be able to be seen for several months or longer. But we want to make sure you know that when they do become available, they're absolutely worth it. And the first film that we're going to talk about is one called Flamin' Hot. And I'll read the IMDb summary of this film. Flamin' Hot. And if you look at Jim's video, if you were watching live as opposed to listening to the audio, Jim's got a bag of Cheetos, Flamin' Hot Crunchy, right there on the screen for us. This film is the story of Richard Montañez.
Okay, now that was audio hell.
Yeah. This is the story of Richard Montañez, who was a janitor at Frito-Lay, who channeled his Mexican-American heritage and upbringing to turn Flamin' Hot Cheetos into a snack that disrupted the food industry and became a global phenomenon. So we're going to talk about this movie, totally spoiler-free for just a few minutes. We're not going to go super deep because we don't want to ruin your experience about it. But guys, tell us a little bit about Flamin' Hot. What'd you think?
I mean, yeah, Flamin' Hot was one of my favorites coming out of the festival. The story I didn't know anything about. Of course, everybody knows the Flaming Hot flavor of Cheetos, Fritos, Doritos. But this is really the story of how it came about. And apparently it came about from the idea of a janitor who worked at Frito-Lay, who brought his own cultural, knowledge, I guess, to what people would really like to see in terms of flavors and spicy flavors. So that's how the Flaming Hot flavor became popular, and like billions of snack foods later, we get this movie. I love this movie. This is a real, what you would call a real crowd pleaser, right? This is a kind of a quote unquote rags to riches story about somebody who was working as a janitor at a food factory, who had an idea, worked hard to get his idea in front of people, and good things happened. I really love this movie. It's got Tony Shalhoub in it, who plays Roger Enrico, kind of the head of Frito-Lay, I think, at the time. Dennis Haysbert, and it's got a great performance in the lead by Jesse Garcia as well.
Yeah, this is a feel-good movie is where this one fits, right? Like, this is a movie that between the way that it does its shots, the way that it sets up its comedy and its character interactions, even like the color palette that's used and the narrative choices they make, this movie never sets out to like necessarily like challenge you or to make you feel kind of like down. And that's not a read against this movie at all. Like, this movie wants to inspire you. This movie wants to sort of make you feel like with like that anything is possible if you have an idea and you have a dream and you have the gumption to make it happen. This is the type of film that really is built around that feeling of warmth that you get from those types of movies, right? Which is fitting because this film is actually going to be released on Hulu and Disney Plus on June 9th, in terms of like where you can find this one, right? So this is one that you're going to be able to see, and it's in a good platform. Disney is a good platform for this one, right? This feels like a good, like you mentioned, rags to riches style story. Definitely a good pick from the festival. Ava Longoria's directorial debut, and I definitely like some of the choices that she made here. This one's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I got to be honest. Eva Longoria is coming to us from Desperate Housewives fame, and that wasn't a show that I would like watch religiously or anything, but I'd seen several episodes. I was familiar with her from that show, and when I heard that she was directing a movie that was premiering at South by Southwest, I was kind of like, the Desperate Housewives person is directing a movie. Okay, well, let's see how this goes. I think Ava Longoria did a phenomenal job directing this flick. It tells the story so well. Obviously, it is fictionalized to a certain extent. It's maybe a little exaggerated, but by and large tells the true story of how this product came into being. One of the things that I really loved about seeing this film at South by Southwest especially is we got to see the real Richard Montañez and his wife in the audience. They answered some questions during the Q&A. They got to stand up and say hi to everybody, and it was just super neat, seeing this with them there. I am not a religious, Cheetos person, but it's it's a fun snack if you really like and can tolerate super spicy things. And they gave us little packets of Flamin' Hot Cheetos as we were coming out of the theater, and it had been a while since I had one. And I was standing there with Will. I opened my little bag of Cheetos. I eat one, and Will's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "It's flaming hot. It's flaming hot."
Sweat on his brow, like sweat on his brow and orange on his fingers.
I know, right? But yeah, this is definitely a really, really cool movie, and you can set a reminder now. Will, what was that date again? If people want to put it on their calendar, set a reminder, etc.
Absolutely. That's going to be June 9th. It's a Friday.
Just remember Jim's birthday. Just remember Jim's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Jim. You're going to have a flaming hot birthday. Hey, you know what? That's also the day that Transformers Rise of the Beasts comes out. So it looks like they really set you up for success on your birthday.
Could be fun.
Happy birthday, Jim, from the Autobots. Anyway. All right, cool. Well, yeah, check it out. Flamin' Hot, June 9th, Disney Plus, Hulu, etc. Definitely one you're not going to want to miss. Guys, anything else you want to say on Flamin' Hot before we move on to our next film?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. It's a chippy movie. Definitely check it out.
Yeah.
But I'm bumped. All right. Our next film is a fun one. This was a film that a lot of people really, really enjoyed, including us, obviously, called Molly and Max in the Future. And I'll read you again the IMDb description. A sci-fi romantic comedy about a man and a woman whose orbits repeatedly collide over the course of 12 years, 4 planets, 3 dimensions, and 1 space cult. Again, we're going to talk about this film totally spoiler free, but we'll give you enough, juice to hopefully get you excited about it. So go for it, guys. Who wants to start first on this one?
I'll go. I dug this movie. It was the way I think of this movie is it's kind of like a meet cute relationship, friendship / love story set in the universe of Blade Runner, right? That's kind of the way I think of this movie. And one of the things that stood out for me, yes, I mean the relationship stuff was really good. These two people are kind of finding themselves through different moments in or different periods in their life. As people change, their paths intersect and diverge and then reconverge again, maybe later on a different planet, whatever. Both of these characters here, Molly played by Zosia Mamet and Max played by Aristotle Athari, I thought were really, really good. And the support characters were a lot of fun as well. What really astounded me about this film, and it's opened up to us a little bit in the credits of this movie. They've inserted kind of a little snippets of kind of the making of this movie, and a lot of the stuff. Of course, there's digital effects here, of course, but there's a lot of practical effects that were used and practical props and sets and costumes and stuff like that that were kind of, you could tell, made on a relatively low budget. And I love to see that stuff done practically. It's just a lot of fun to see. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound like one of the things that, like, didn't you just say this? But this is one of my favorite films from the festival, right? There were, I loved seeing something like John Wick, which just absolutely kicked me in the teeth. But I also loved seeing something like Molly and Max in the Future, that I don't know if how easily I would have been able to have seen this movie otherwise. But this film festival environment and where we saw it, when we saw it, how it fit into the schedule, just made for this perfect circumstance of seeing a movie that I didn't know I need to see, but I'm so glad I did. This is a lo-fi sci-fi rom-com. The special effects in this are intentionally lo-fi and like sort of chintzy a little bit, like kind of wonky the way that they're set up. But like it's not because they're bad effects. That's I don't want to undersell it. It's because they're going for an aesthetic that feels like very like handmade and crafted and with its own little personality and quirks, so that when you then zoom into where these two characters are meeting across multiple planets over 10 years, and as they go through all of these different things in their life, which it's like robot fights and space cults and all sorts of crazy shit that happens in the future. It creates a fun backdrop for what's ultimately a very kind of down to earth in a lot of ways story of two people who found each other, but maybe didn't find each other at the right time for them to have a romantic connection, and have to sort of navigate what that means. Both of the leads here, Zozia Mamet, she was in The Kids Are All Right. She was in Girls. She's been in a few different things before. She's wonderful. I was absolutely delighted to see Aristotle Atharian here, because I've only ever seen him as a supporting character on Saturday Night Live before. And it was interesting seeing him become a very, very compelling lead in this film. Yeah, this was, again, one of the gems of the festival. Director Michael Lukwak needs to just be absolutely celebrated and just given like a truckload of money for whatever he wants to make next, because I would 100% watch it.
I am in complete and total agreement with both of you. I love it when that happens. I mean, it's okay to disagree, of course.
Mhm.
I like the discourse, but for this one, this absolutely blew me away in so many ways. I'll read a line from my Letterboxd review. She's a level 7 space witch. He's a famous mecha fighter. Together, they're a pair of awkward, spacefaring lovebirds hoping to find each other and themselves at the same time. That should totally be in the trailer, in that voice. Just, you have my
Yeah,
permission,
that should be the trailer.
movie folks, to just take that from the Movie Bears podcast and use that. I love the setup of this. It's fantastic. The effects, both digital and practical, are really cheap and chintzy, but I think deliberately so. I think they are meant to make you laugh. When a character is using space magic, it makes a video game noise, and there's a pixelated, blur of energy in her hand, and it's I don't know. It's bad, but good bad, which
Like they
might be
just
hard to
fired up
understand.
After Effects and just
Yeah.
yeah. And,
Well,
and again, it works.
it does, and not even After Effects. I mean, I'm thinking the Microsoft Paint version of After
Yeah.
Effects, But it's such a cool visual way to kind of represent certain things happening and set things up. I love the story of these two sort of finding each other, maybe at the wrong time, finding each other again and again and again and again, and just seeing their relationship evolve. It actually reminds me a lot of Harry Met Sally in a lot of ways, minus the like orgasm scene in a restaurant. But both of the leads are just, they're fantastic here. They have great chemistry. Their connection or lack thereof, question mark, is believable. And I really, really dug it. And again, the South by Southwest experience, we got to see this film with the principal cast in attendance, with the director there. And it was really cool to hear them talk about the making of this film. As Jim mentioned earlier in the credits, we do get to see some behind the scenes stuff as the credits are rolling. But it was just neat to hear these people, talk about this like silly, funny, rom-com-y in space, but like the heart and the passion I think that they brought to this project really came out, when they were talking about it as well as on screen. So this, man, total slam dunk for me. So good.
I hope Molly and Max is in all of your futures.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, we'll have to keep an eye out for this one being picked up and released somewhere down the line, because and we, if we see it, we should let people know, maybe in our plug section of a future show.
Absolutely. We'll be monitoring all of these. I know right now there's no distribution news that I've seen. I've even been following the director on his web. He has a website where he's been compiling like press releases and things like that. And so I checked right before the show, and nothing yet. But man, I can't wait till this one shows up somewhere.
Yeah, I Googled the release date, and it was the date we saw the movie. And I was like, oh.
Yeah,
right,
It's like,
that's all there is. Yeah,
they do default to those. Yeah,
they do. All right, fellas, any final thoughts on Molly and Max in the future? Okay, well then we're literally going to the future ourselves now that it's 5 seconds from when we were talking about the movie, and we're going to talk about our final film of this episode. We'll talk more about it here in just a second. We're of course going to be bringing more movie pings for you over the next several episodes, but our last movie for this installment of our South by Southwest film coverage is a little film called Brooklyn 45. Now, if you listened to the show last week, we talked about a movie called Talk to Me, which was also fantastic, all about people who perform a seance of a kind and bad things happen with spirits. Well, we've got another seance movie where bad things happen with spirits. But this one's interesting. So it takes place in Brooklyn in 1945. Let me read the IMDb summary for you. 5 military veterans, best friends since childhood, gather together to support their troubled host, and the metaphoric ghosts of their past become all too literal. Dun dun dun. Will, what did you because you're kind of like, of the three of us, the most like horror oriented, I would say. How did this one go down for you?
This one went down real smooth, and there's a reason we're highlighting it here. We want people to know about this. We want people to see it. I knew I was in for a good experience when I saw that it was that Ted Geoghegan was attached as the director. He's done 2 previous films that I'd seen, Mohawk and We Are Still Here. We Are Still Here, which actually played at South by Southwest several years prior. And he has a very unique and distinct point of view. What I love so much about Brooklyn 45 is that it's not just like a horror movie. It's actually set in a horror setting, but more than anything, it's a talky drama with thriller and supernatural elements. The entire movie takes place in one room, and it's these people holding the seance to sort of figure out something from beyond. But as much as they're dealing with that, they're also dealing with some of the trauma and the grudges that all of them have with one another and with certain other people based off of their experiences in World War II. Now, this isn't like World War II as like a historical footnote or World War II as a thing that we think of like in, the distant past. This is World War II as something that these characters had been through like 2 or 3 years prior, right?
Right.
This is something that was very fresh in their minds, very still fresh in their hearts, and still left very permanent scars in the way that they saw the world. And each one of them came out of that experience with something different. And all of those things played out differently in the scene. I love stuff like that. I love something where you put people in a pressure cooker and you see what comes of it. This movie is going to be coming out on Shudder. I don't see a release date for it yet, but I know Shudder, because of the success that they've had with Gyogan. They actually had this one picked up ahead of South by Southwest. So we should be seeing it sometime pretty soon. I'm showing up on the Shudder platform. And yeah, you should definitely check this one out. It's the goods.
All right.
Yeah,
Heavy hitter for Will.
yeah.
Jim, yeah, how about for you?
Yeah, I really like this one too, especially because it kind of threw a curveball at me, right? I love films that surprise me in any way, and this one did. I thought I was going into a straight up kind of seance horror supernatural movie, and yes, we got elements of that. It does have elements of that, and by the way, those elements I thought, even though they were few and they weren't the focus of the film, I thought they were really well done, added to the tension that was there between these characters who all kind of brought a darkness into this setting. By the way, it's all kind of done in one setting. Well, you call that a bottle episode or
Yeah, it's like
or
a bottle,
something
like the bottle episode of television,
Right, right, right. And I think that really adds to the tension. This is a really tense drama with some supernatural elements and all of it really works together. I thought the cast was amazing here. Like each of them brought a character to the table, literally to the table, that really worked. And I was interested in every single one of the characters here because they each brought something. They each had a little mystery kind of in their past, and these characters kind of unfold or a little bit more about the characters is brought out as the story goes along, and it's really well scripted, really tight. Dialogue is amazing here. You're talking about a movie that has a little bit of action, but not a ton of action. And the dialogue keeps this movie afloat because it's really sharp, really crisp, and there really isn't a dull moment here. I really liked Brooklyn 45.
You both hit on so many reasons that this film just utterly and completely slaps. Is that what the young people say these days? I feel like maybe
I'm
I've heard it.
I
2
say
years ago.
that, and I'm nowhere near young, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I don't want to get myself in trouble by using a word the wrong way.
Mhm.
But one thing I want to call out, well, two things, I guess, additionally. One, you guys mentioned that it's kind of like a bottle episode. It all takes place kind of in one setting. It reminded me a lot of a stage play.
Yeah.
With
Oh, yeah.
primarily one setting, especially because it is such a character-driven drama. I mean, there is definitely some action in this movie. There's definitely some horror in this movie, but like you guys said, by and large, this is a character drama. It's a character piece. But I think that the stage-like setting adds an air of like claustrophobia that amps up everything that's happening. I mean, these characters are like, in a room. They're kind of on top of each other. They're trying to figure out crazy shit that's going on. They're trying to start violence, stop violence. It's really, really effective. And the second thing I want to call out is a performance from one of the folks in the film that I was really blown away by. Anne Ramsey. You may have seen her on a little show called Mad About You back in the 90s and early aughts. She was on Star Trek The Next Generation. I mean, she's got a good body of work in film and TV. We saw this at the Alamo Draft House, South Lamar. And so we're standing literally at like the front of the Express Pass line inside by the big wall with all the South by and sponsor logos that like everybody takes pictures in front of. And I just happened to turn and I see Anne Ramsey in a leather biker jacket, just like standing there, hanging out, talking to people. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Helen Hunt's sister from the show. But she was incredible in this movie. I didn't know that she was going to be in it. I didn't really read much beyond plot synopses before going in. So it was a real treat to see her, in person, but also throughout this movie. Without giving too much away, she plays a character who used to be an interrogator during the war. And she has to kind of come to grips with lots of things throughout the course of the movie. And I think all the performances were great, but she completely fucking blew me away. I cannot wait to see her in something else at this point. So good.
Yep. I think this movie really hits upon the fact that, like, I think I'm discovering things about myself as I grow older, and one of them is, I think one of my kinks is a good chamber piece, just one of these like one setting movies, right? Because for the most part, it's always a compelling setup for me personally, and when they do it as well as they did it here, I mean, it's just a masterpiece. Like, you don't have to rely on a bunch of scene changes or a bunch of different things like that to keep my interest. You can just make the setting, make the characters, make the story compelling and go.
Yeah. It really reminded me a lot of the original Twilight Zone series. Like, if you think of some of those Twilight Zone episodes, a lot of those were bottle episode kind of things where it was really, tight character drama. I'm watching this and I'm grinning ear to ear because I'm getting those really strong Twilight Zone kind of vibes, right? And all of those are great, and this is fantastic too. And you have to, in my mind, I'm like, I have to think that the writer director Ted, I'm going to try to pronounce this. Hopefully, I get it right. Gogan, has maybe some of that vibe in mind, because that certainly came across in this film.
What's so great about this and some of the other movies we've talked about is, I think it's probably really easy if you're listening right now going like, okay guys, did you only see great movies at the festival? Because everything, it's been, high marks across the board. And full disclosure, we're celebrating the ones that we like the best, right? We want people to see these.
Yeah.
But it was really easy with this festival because we walked away with a large list of films that we liked, and the list of films that didn't work for us was really small and really came down to personal taste. So it just goes to show how good the programming was overall, that we have more movies that we want to share with you than we're going to have time to do in one episode, 2 episode. I mean, geez, guys, it's almost like we maybe have to do some additional coverage in some upcoming weeks. What do you guys think?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was kind of thinking along the same lines. What about you, Jim?
We may have to just sneak in a little bit more because, like I said, following up with what you said, I think this felt to me like one of the strongest programming years we've seen at South by Southwest. And, I love that because we did not see really any clunkers. I mean, these films went from good to pretty freaking amazing. And so yeah, I think because we saw so many great films, I think I would love to talk about more of them on the upcoming shows.
Brad, what do you think? What might be on the slate for upcoming weeks?
Well, interesting that you ask that. So, as we've been, jokingly alluding to, we have much more South by Southwest Film 2023 coverage coming your way. Next week, we're going to be recording on April 4th. We've got a South by Southwest double feature for you. 2 films that are coming out this weekend that you can go out and see and are awesome. We can't wait to talk about them. Those films are Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves and Tetris. So that's your homework for this weekend. Go see both movies, or at least one of them if you can, and then come back and listen to the episode after you've seen the second one. That's totally fine.
And
we've got
Brad,
that.
Tetris is going to be on Apple TV. It's available. Dungeons and
Yep.
Dragons in theaters. So yeah.
Yeah. But, busy weekends, especially if you've got family and kids, it can be hard to find time to watch 2 movies in a weekend. But if you can do it, great. The week after that, we're going to be recording on April 11th. We're going to be talking Super Mario Bros. But on top of that, we'll be bringing you more South by Southwest films to put on your radar. And then later in April, recording on 4/25, we are going to be reviewing Evil Dead Rise, coming out of South by Southwest. That's going to be a fun one. I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do a little bit of show and tell for some of the props and stuff like that we got.
Oh,
I can
Fire
yeah.
up the wood chipper.
When we get to the spoiler section of the Evil Dead episode, we're going to have some amazing show and tell props because they gave us some goodies for that one.
They did. So anyway, a lot more South by Southwest coming at you. I know a lot of folks are probably more here for like mainline movie reviews, and that's fine. We got you covered there. But I will tell you, we've had a bunch of folks hanging out with us watching the South by stuff the last couple weeks. Hopefully we're putting some good stuff out there that you'll be able to track down once it's available that you will enjoy. So more to come. But again, thank you to Claudette and the team. Awesome programming here at South by Southwest.
Yes.
Can't say enough good things. I did see a couple clunkers, Jim. I know you mentioned
Okay.
that for you, they were by and large, good to great.
They're very rare. Right.
They are. There were only 2 that like fell below like 3 stars for me. So
Interesting. You know what? I think I had 2 and I think it was the same 2. But again, I understood why they were programmed. And like they hit better with other people. So it wasn't like they were bad movies. They were just like, we got to grade something on a scale.
I mean, movie watching is incredibly subjective. Things are going to hit differently for different people. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's completely a thing, but so many great movies coming out of this festival. Definitely want to bring more to you. Now, we're going to be talking about more of these films in subsequent episodes, but there's another way as well that you can dial into a lot of our thoughts on these different films. We'll mention it here in a second when we kind of do our outros, but I would recommend that you look us up on Letterboxd and Twitter and Facebook. Will, I know you posted a bunch of reviews on Facebook. I wrote a review for everything I saw at South by and put it on Twitter. Of course, it's on my Letterboxd. Jim, you put stuff out on Twitter and Letterboxd. So there's way more stuff than we can possibly talk about, even if we did like 20 South by Southwest episodes. So feel free to check those out. We'll give you our socials in a sec. Catch up with those other films and our thoughts there. But let's let people know how they can get in touch and where they can find that stuff between now and our next recording. Jim, how can people connect with you and find more of your thoughts?
Yeah, as you said, I'm on Letterboxd at JJP Out West, and you can also find me on Twitter under the same handle at JJP Out West, and on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
Awesome. Thanks so much, babe. And Will, how about for you?
I'm all over the interwebs. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle there is at whatever cove. I'm on, Facebook, William Lindis there. Just send me a message so I know who you are. It just helps to make sure you're a real person and not a bot. I post a ton on Letterboxd. I got reviews of every film up that was at South by Southwest, as well as just other things that I've seen. You can either look for William Lindis or my handle there is Fundamental. I'm on TikTok at the Movie Bear, and I do also want to flag this week. Double check both our Facebook page and our website this week. I'll have a review coming up for an upcoming released film called 1001. So there'll be a written review for that coming out soon. So, we don't have time to review every movie here on the show, but there'll be a written review coming up there if that's one that has your fancy.
Cool. Thank you, Will. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one that likely has Chub, Chaser, Bear, etc. friends in common with you, please send me a message first so I know you're not a hairy chest presenting bot trying to sneak in under the radar on the cute factor. You can also find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at iBradPro. And I think that wraps us up for this week. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, folks. Jim, Will, as always, it was a pleasure talking movies with you fellas, and we'll see you all next time for episode 400 and, believe it or not, 69
Nice.
of the Movie Bears
Yeah.
podcast. Join us for 69 action next week. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Yeah, I'm thinking we'll be back. Bye.
Bye.